He was standing in his dimly lit room. It is stained with blood and body parts are scattered in every corner of the house. He tries to clean up this mess, collecting the remaining remains of the body in the usual garbage bag. Meanwhile the phone rang. He picked up the phone to find his young son's voice on the other side reassuring him. At that moment the severed head, placed on one of the shelves, fell and rolled towards him. His eyes widened in horror. At that time his young son's voice came to him, asking, "Dad, are you still cold?" Yu Young Chul was born on April 18, 1970 in Gochang District. It is a rural area in South Korea. He comes from a family suffering from extreme poverty. He suffered from epilepsy, which runs in the family. During his childhood, his mother left home due to his father's addiction to alcohol and his repeated assaults on her and their children, which forced him to live for a period of time with his father and wife who beat him. Until his mother was able to collect enough money, she took him and his older brother back to live with her. Although his mother treated him kindly, Yu Young Cheol's behavior took a turn for the worse, because his mother's kindness is not enough to overlook his biggest complex, which is his poverty, especially since a wealthy family lives close to him, and always reminds him of that class gap which exacerbates his bitterness and his envy for simply passing near the gate of their house. Thus, Yu developed a personal hostility against the rich, and he became accustomed to stealing to the point that he went to the reformatory 14 times. In 1991, Hu, then 21, married a massage girl named Huang and they had a son. Although he was now a family man, he did not change his bad habits and continued to steal and defraud, and in the end he raped a 15-year-old girl, which eventually prompted his wife to file for divorce. While trying to get over the divorce and his impending imprisonment because of the cases against him, he received news of his father's death due to an epileptic seizure. His brother soon fell ill with the same disease, and then a prison sentence was issued against him. All these harsh and successive blows pushed him to the brink of collapse. Prison was the ideal place to feed his sick and hateful imagination about killing, and inside his head, it gradually transformed into plans that would be implemented when the time came and the circumstances were right. Who better to target than the wealthy, whom he envies to the core? He found in reading about a notorious Korean serial killer who preyed on the wealthy, an inspiration for him whenever he was lucky enough to follow in his footsteps. In September 2003, Oh was released from prison and found a place to live, Gangnam, an area known to have some of the wealthiest people in South Korea. As he looked at the lives of the residents in the upscale residential areas nearby, his inner thoughts became more imbalanced, so he went and bought a gun, and began training for his future crimes by killing dogs. 13 days later, Yu Young Cheol sneaked into a 2-story house owned by 72-year-old Lee Duk-soo, a professor at Sukmyung University, and his 68-year-old wife Lee Eun-ok. Before any of them could defend themselves, he killed them with a hammer. Here he finally felt victory, the victory of cowards who target the weakest among them. Since he had just discovered that killing is not that difficult and that destroying society is easier than trying to reform it, the attack began again, but this time targeting a family of 3, killing them in the same way as before, which was using a hammer. A week later, the 69-year-old flight attendant, the wife of a Samsung executive, Dong, was also killed on November 18. Yu pulled his hammer again, this time to kill a wealthy 80-year-old man and his housekeeper, and this time to set the house on fire. Since I am reading what is on your mind, dear reader, and I see you wondering how all these people left their windows open for the killer to sneak in, so let me tell you that most of them were the ones who invited him into his house. As a former fraudster, he was claiming that he owned a successful project that could generate huge profits if he found someone to finance it, even if this financier would take the largest share of the profits. Who wouldn't invite this promising businessman to his home? Meanwhile, the police were confused. The victims were not related to each other, and the killer did not take any of their valuables. Even surveillance cameras didn't show much, and investigators had few clues about the identity of the killer himself. Suddenly, and without warning, Yu Young Chol's crimes stopped. You may think for a moment that this is an awakening of conscience, but in reality it was just the preoccupation of a man who had just fallen in love. This time the girl was also a masseuse like his ex-wife, except that the difference between the two women is that the latter works in a center that provides sexual services to its clients. However, he gave up killing anyway and moved to another place to start again. In his free time, he wrote poems and painted, as if he had become someone else who had nothing to do with our greedy killer. 2 months later, he proposed to her to marry and have children, but the friend rejected him because of his family's genetic history of epilepsy and his criminal history with the law. In fact, it was precisely after this romantic offer that I broke up with him for good. You can guess what you felt at that time and the next step he took after this hurtful rejection. Soon that frantic desire to kill came back to him, him. But this time, he turned his attention to the female workers in massage parlors that provide sexual services to customers. Young Chul started calling masseuses who service in-house clients by phone to come to his house. Once the women were inside, he would have sex with them, then beat them with a sledgehammer that he custom-made to fit his fist. After that, he begins to mutilate their bodies, then cuts his victims into 16 to 18 pieces and begins to eat parts of his victims in order to purify his soul. According to his belief, he would then tiptoe their fingers away from where he disposed of the body to hinder their identification, then take the rest of the organs, and bury them on a mountain near Bangwon Temple. Unlike the deaths of wealthy people, the killing of the girls did not cause any uproar. No one cared about them. Oh God, the owners of massage parlors who felt that something was wrong. One of the owners of these salons called to report the disappearance of 2 girls who worked for him. The number of victims reached 11 girls. As the old saying goes, no crime is perfect. You committed the most serious mistake in his criminal history when he used the phone of one of his victims to request a massage for her from the same place from which he had previously requested 2 girls, and had just reported their disappearance to the police. The salon owner recognized the number and called the police again. Meanwhile, the salon owner managed to convince young Chul to come to the hotel and receive a wonderful massage session better than what he would get at home, and the latter fell into the trap. As for the police, they prepared to arrest this serial killer by sending only 1 policeman. He stayed for a little while, and when he was late, he left, leaving the massage staff to take the place of the police to arrest him. When the killer entered the hotel where he arranged to meet his victim, the massage parlor employees greeted him and began to surround him and fight with him, until they succeeded in arresting him. As for the police station official, he stated, "It is true that the workers at the massage parlor arrested Mr. Yu first, but isn't it also true that we sent our men?" He used the plural form to talk about the policeman who came alone and left early. After the police took control, Yu claimed to have an epileptic seizure, and managed to escape for 12 hours, until they were able to arrest him again. And here we have reached the end of the video. I hope you liked the story. Don't forget to like and subscribe.